Returning home earlier than usual, I felt that someone was in the apartment. At first, I thought it might be burglars, but then, out of the bedroom, walked my completely naked husband. And behind him followed something that made me freeze in shock. Welcome to the channel. Here, it's not fiction, it's life. Here, wives take revenge, husbands repent, and mothers-in-law always know what's best. Make yourself comfortable. Ahead are stories you won't be able to tear yourself away from. I had never believed in premonitions. I'd always considered myself a rational person, an engineer by education, a skeptic by nature. But that October day, coming home 2 hours earlier than usual, I felt something strange. As if the air had grown thicker, and my heart started to race for no reason. Emiliano and I had been together for 8 years. We met in college, at a boring advanced math lecture. He was sitting 2 rows ahead, turned around to borrow a pen, and our eyes met. I still remember his slightly shy smile, the dimple on his left cheek. A week later, we were inseparable. We married a year after graduation, when he got a good job at an IT company and I joined a design bureau. An ordinary family, an ordinary life. An apartment in a residential neighborhood on the 9th floor of a high-rise, a car bought on credit. Plans for children, postponed year after year. First, because we needed to get on our feet financially. Then because of my career, I got promoted and didn't want to go on maternity leave. Then because of Emiliano's work, which demanded more and more of his time. Then simply because of exhaustion, the constant lack of time and energy for conversations about the future. For the last 6 months, I'd noticed Emiliano becoming distant. He talked less at dinner, spent more time buried in his phone. He often worked late, sometimes coming home after midnight, smelling of cigarettes even though he didn't smoke. He said his coworkers smoked, and he just stood next to them for some fresh air. I believed him, or rather, I didn't want not to believe him. I blamed it all on a new project he'd mentioned in passing, a big contract, tight deadlines, endless overtime. I didn't have time to question it anyway. At the bureau, I'd been assigned a major commercial center project on the outskirts of the city. It was worth a lot of money, and I couldn't afford to relax. I left home at 7 in the morning, when Emiliano was still asleep, and came back around 9 in the evening, when he was already at his computer with his headphones on. We'd become ships passing in the night. Sometimes I caught myself realizing I couldn't even remember the last time we'd had sex. A month ago? 2? 3? Emiliano said he was tired. I didn't insist. I was exhausted myself. On weekends, he'd go visit his parents, or fishing with friends, or to some corporate event. I stayed home, catching up on sleep and finishing drawings. But today, the client postponed our meeting until tomorrow, and I unexpectedly had the afternoon off. My boss told me to go home early. I'd already overworked this week anyway. I decided not to call Emiliano. I wanted to surprise him. We hadn't spent time together for ages, hadn't really talked. Maybe I'd cook his favorite steak, open that bottle of good wine we'd been saving for a special occasion, make it a romantic evening by candlelight. On my way home, I stopped by the supermarket, bought fresh lettuce, cherry tomatoes, blue cheese, Emiliano's favorite. I even picked up strawberries, not in season, expensive, but I wanted something special. In the car, I turned on the radio and sang along to the old songs we used to listen to when we first started dating. In the elevator, I was going over the recipe for the steak sauce in my mind. There was cream in the fridge, cognac too. I just need to saute some shallots and add spices. In the mirrored elevator doors, I saw a tired 30-year-old woman with dark circles under her eyes and hair pulled back in a messy bun. My black down jacket made me look shapeless. My jeans were baggy at the knees. When had I let myself go like this? I used to take care of myself, get manicures, go to the hairdresser, wear nice clothes. Now I didn't even want to look in the mirror. The elevator stopped on the 9th floor with a familiar gentle jolt. I walked down the hallway toward our apartment, past our neighbor Consuelo's door. She always knew all the building gossip, and past the young couple's place, the one with the perpetually screaming baby. The key turned in the lock silently. Emiliano had oiled it recently, saying the creak bothered him when he worked at night. I pushed open the door and froze on the threshold, still holding the grocery bag in my hands. Someone was in the apartment. I heard muffled sounds coming from deeper inside. Voices? No. Something else. Music? No. A rustling noise, strange sounds I couldn't identify. My heart plummeted, my mouth went dry. My first thought, burglars. I should have quietly shut the door and called the police right then, but my legs wouldn't move. I stood in the hallway, clutching the bag so tightly my fingers turned white, listening to the sounds coming from our bedroom. The rustle of bedsheets, a muffled laugh, a woman's laugh, high, clear, young, completely unfamiliar, and alongside it, a low male voice saying something indistinct. And then I understood. I understood everything at once, though my brain fought to deny the obvious, to find any other explanation. The bag slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. My legs carried me down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the bathroom, toward the bedroom at the end. I moved as if in a dream, watching myself from afar, detached, eerily calm. The bedroom door was open about 10 centimeters. I pushed it wider, not trying to be quiet. It creaked softly. First, Emiliano came out, completely naked. His hair was tousled, a fresh red scratch on his neck, a relaxed, satisfied smile on his lips. He was walking toward the bathroom, not looking around. Then he saw me, and time seemed to stop. The smile vanished from his face as if wiped away. His skin turned so pale that freckles I'd never noticed before stood out on his nose. His eyes widened in terror. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Isabella? He finally managed, reaching out to me in a weak, defensive gesture. But I didn't hear his voice, didn't see his face, felt nothing but a hollow emptiness inside. Because behind him, stepping out of the bedroom, was my younger sister, Valentina. Valentina stopped in the doorway, wearing only my silk nightgown, the burgundy one Emiliano had given me for my last birthday. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her lips swollen, a fresh hickey visible on her neck. She looked at me with wide blue eyes, and in them there was no shame, no remorse, only fear, raw, primal fear. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, though only seconds passed. Me, Emiliano, and Valentina. A perfect triangle straight out of a cheap soap opera or tabloid novel. Only this was my life, my apartment, my husband, and my sister. Isabella, I can explain. Emiliano spoke first, frantically grabbing his jeans from the chair and pulling them on. I said nothing, just stood there, staring at them both, trying to comprehend what was happening. My younger sister Valentina, the 24-year-old girl I'd raised after our parents died, whose university I'd paid for, whom I'd taken into this home, who just yesterday sat in my kitchen drinking tea and complaining about her failed love life, was now walking out of my bedroom in my nightgown after sleeping with my husband. How long? My voice came out surprisingly calm, almost casual. Emiliano and Valentina exchanged glances, and that look was everything, their secret, their closeness, their shared moments so carefully hidden from me. 6 months, Valentina whispered, lowering her eyes. 6 months. For 6 months, they'd been seeing each other behind my back, while I worked late nights, while I built our future, while I postponed having a child for the sake of my career, for the money, for this damned apartment where my husband was screwing my sister. Isabella, please listen. Emiliano took a step toward me, but I recoiled as if from a leper. Don't come near me. I raised my hand to stop him. Don't even come close. Valentina pressed herself against the doorframe, wrapping her arms around her body. She had always been the beautiful one, slim, delicate, with porcelain skin and huge eyes. I was always sturdier, plainer, without that doll-like grace. Our parents adored Valentina, spoiled her, forgave every whim. And me? I got the duties, the responsibilities, the scolding for every mistake. When they died in a car accident, Valentina was 16. I was 22. I became her mother, her father, and her older sister all at once. I gave up graduate school so I could earn more. Worked 2 jobs to pay for her tutors, her fashionable clothes, her entertainment. When she got into university, I was happier than she was. All that time, I thought we were close, that there was a special bond between us. And she was sleeping with my husband. For 6 months. 180 days of betrayal. Why? I looked at Valentina, and she flinched under my gaze. We didn't plan it, she stammered, twisting her hands. And then I noticed the bracelet on her wrist, the one I thought Emiliano had given me for our 8th wedding anniversary. He'd said he'd ordered 2 identical ones, one for me, one for himself, as a symbol of our bond. He lied. The second one he'd given to her. Didn't plan it. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound that even to my own ears bordered on hysteria. So you accidentally undressed and accidentally ended up in the same bed, over and over, for 6 months? Isabella, it just happened, Emiliano said, buttoning his jeans and trying to come closer again. I never meant to hurt you, but what? I turned to him, and he recoiled at the fury in my eyes. But you fell in love? But we drifted apart? But I worked too much and didn't give you enough attention. Go on, say your pathetic excuse out loud. He stayed silent, head bowed. Valentina sobbed quietly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara across her cheeks. Once, I would have rushed to comfort her, hugged her, soothed her. Now, I wanted only one thing, for both of them to disappear from my life. Get out. I walked past them into the bedroom without looking at either. The bed was a mess, the sheets stained. The air reeked of sex and her perfume, the expensive one I'd bought her last New Year. Used condoms lay on the nightstand. At least they'd used protection. How thoughtful, how responsible. Isabella, please, let's talk. Emiliano's voice came from behind me. Get out of my house. I screamed, turning toward them. Now, both of you. Valentina snatched her dress and purse from the floor, slipped her shoes onto her bare feet, and ran out of the apartment without even getting dressed. Emiliano stood frozen in the bedroom. Isabella, please. You have 10 minutes to pack your things and leave, I said slowly, pronouncing each word clearly. If you're still here after 10 minutes, I'm calling the police. But this is my home too, he protested, a hint of indignation creeping into his voice. The apartment is in my name. I paid the down payment. I pay the mortgage, because your salary barely covers your own expenses. So no, this is my home. And you don't live here anymore. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Maybe he really was. Not the convenient, compliant Isabella who always understood and forgave everything. Not the quiet, invisible wife who worked herself to exhaustion and asked for nothing in return. But someone else. Someone who could say no. Someone who would no longer let herself be walked on. I'll call you, he muttered, gathering up his scattered clothes. We should talk about this calmly. Don't call me. Ever. My lawyer will contact yours. He froze, holding his shirt in his hands. Lawyer? You're going to divorce me? I looked at him for a long moment. At this stranger I'd lived with for 8 years. The man who knew how I liked my morning coffee, what movies I preferred, how I flinched at sudden noises. The man who held my hand at our parents' funeral, who promised to love me for life, who swore fidelity in front of 200 guests at our wedding. And what did you think? That I'd forgive you? That the 3 of us would play happy family? I gave a bitter smile. Leave, Emiliano, before I change my mind and do something I'll regret. He dressed silently, stuffing socks, t-shirts, and his phone charger into a duffel bag. I stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, watching him pack. It felt like something out of a surreal movie. There he was, picking up his favorite hoodie. There, shoving sneakers into the bag. There was glancing around, checking if he'd forgotten anything. At the door, he stopped and turned back. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't answer. Just closed the door in his face and turned the key in the lock. For several minutes after he left, I just stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door. The apartment filled with a deafening silence, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of cars outside. I still felt nothing. As if it weren't happening to me, but to some other woman whose life I was watching through thick glass. Then I slowly walked to the kitchen. The grocery bag still lay where I'd dropped it. The strawberries were probably crushed. The steaks would spoil if I didn't put them in the fridge. Funny, I'd been planning a romantic dinner less than half an hour ago. I wanted to reconnect with my husband, who, at that very moment, had been screwing my sister in our bed. I turned on the kettle automatically, took out a mug, a tea bag, sat down at the table and stared out the window, at the sliver of gray October sky between the buildings. The kettle boiled, clicked off, but I didn't move. My phone started ringing nonstop. First Valentina, once, twice, 3, 5 times. Then Emiliano. I ignored the calls, didn't read the messages. I didn't need their explanations, their excuses, their pleas for forgiveness. Nothing they could say would change the fact that the two people closest to me had betrayed me in the most disgusting way possible. When the phone rang for the 10th time, I simply switched it off and tossed it onto the couch. Then I sat back at the table and tried to remember, were there signs? Anything I'd missed, overlooked? And there were signs. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Valentina had started visiting more often. She used to come once a week, on Sundays. We'd drink tea, chat, sometimes go shopping. But in recent months, she'd been dropping by 3 or 4 times a week, always in the evenings, when I was at work. She said she came to ask Emiliano for help with her studies. He was a programmer, after all, and she had just started a computer science course. Logical, right? I'd even been glad they got along so well that Emiliano was helping my little sister. God, what a blind fool I'd been. I remembered how, a month ago, I found a hair clip in the bathroom that wasn't mine. I asked Emiliano. He said Valentina must have dropped it when she stopped by. I thought, I'll return it next time I see her. And then I forgot. I remembered how, a couple of weeks ago, I came home and smelled an unfamiliar perfume in the bedroom. Emiliano explained he'd been shopping for a gift for me, and the saleswoman must have sprayed him with a tester, and the scent stuck to his clothes. I believed him. I never got that gift, by the way. I remembered dozens of little things that suddenly formed a clear picture. Their glances at family dinners. The way Valentina blushed when Emiliano spoke. The time he offered to drive her home after dinner, though he usually hated night drives. He came back 3 hours later, saying they grabbed a bite and talked in the car. I hadn't asked a single follow-up question. Because I trusted them. Both of them. Completely and absolutely. Night fell without me noticing. I was still sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, without turning on the light. Outside, the city glowed with thousands of lights. Somewhere in that vast hive were Emiliano and Valentina. Maybe together. Maybe he was comforting her, telling her everything would be fine, that I'd calm down and forgive them. Maybe they were having sex right now, turned on by the thrill of being caught. That thought made me jump up and run to the bathroom. I threw up right into the sink. I stood there, gripping the cold porcelain rim with white-knuckled fingers, staring at my reflection in the mirror. A pale face, red eyes, hair in disarray. When did I get so old? Little lines at the corners of my eyes that weren't there a year ago. The first gray hairs at my temples. The tired, dulled look of a woman who worked too much and lived too little. Valentina, though, was young, fresh, carefree. No wrinkles, no weariness in her eyes, none of that battered maturity of a 30-year-old woman carrying work, house, responsibility on her back. She was the girl I'd been 8 years ago, when Emiliano fell in love with me. Maybe he'd just grown tired of who I'd become. Of the perpetually busy, perpetually exhausted wife who had no time for sex, for conversation, for the simple joys of life. No, stop. I'm not going to excuse him. I won't blame myself because he couldn't keep his dick in his pants, and she couldn't keep her legs closed. I washed my face with cold water, dried it with a towel, and went back to the bedroom. The bed was still rumpled, smelling of both of them. I yanked off the sheets in one sharp motion, stuffed them into the washing machine, poured in a double dose of detergent, and set it to a boil-wash cycle. Then I took out fresh linens and made the bed, trying not to think about how many times they'd been here while I was away. I went through the apartment gathering the things Emiliano hadn't had time to take. His hoodie on the back of a chair, his razor in the bathroom, a book on the nightstand, his favorite mug that says Best Programmer. I put everything into a big trash bag and carried it out to the landing. He can pick it up when he comes. Or the neighbors can snag it. I don't care. I came back in, locked all the locks, and leaned against the door, slowly sliding down to the floor. And that's when, only then, I started to cry. I sobbed, sitting on the cold hallway floor with my arms wrapped around my knees. I cried harder than I had even at our parents' funeral. Back then I wasn't allowed to fall apart, 16-year-old Valentina was right there, and she needed support, comfort. I had to be strong for her. Now I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And there was no one to hold it together for, no reason to. I cried for the 8 years I'd lost, for the shattered illusions, for the trust that would never come back, for a husband who turned out to be a stranger, for a sister who betrayed me in a way even the worst enemy wouldn't. I cried for myself, the naive, foolish, blind version of me, for the Isabella who believed in people and in love. That Isabella died today at 5 in the afternoon, when she saw her naked husband and her sister walking out of the bedroom. I don't know how long I sat on the floor. When there were no tears left, I got up, washed my face again, and turned my phone on. 43 missed calls. 27 messages. I scrolled past them without reading and dialed the one number I truly needed to call. Hello? A woman's voice answered on the third ring. Jimena, it's me. I need a lawyer. A good divorce lawyer. Jimena was a university friend. We didn't talk as often as we used to, but I'd always considered her one of the most reliable people in my life. She worked as an attorney at a big firm and knew all the best specialists in the city. Isabella? What happened? There was worry in her voice. I caught Emiliano with Valentina. In our bed. This afternoon. A long pause. Your Valentina? Your sister Valentina? God. Isabella, where are you right now? Are you alone? At home. I kicked them both out. Good for you, the bastard. Jimena snarled a few more curses, picking out choice epithets for Emiliano and Valentina. Listen, I'm coming over, okay? You shouldn't be alone. No, I'm tired. I rubbed a hand over my face. I just need a lawyer's contact. I want to file for divorce tomorrow. Isabella. Please, Jimena. Just give me the contact. The rest can wait. She was silent for a moment, then dictated a name and number. With a trembling hand, I jotted it down on the first scrap of paper I found. Call her tomorrow morning. Tell her I sent you. She's the best in the city. She'll take that jerk for everything he's got. Thank you. Isabella. Hang in there, okay? You'll get through this. You're strong. I hung up without answering. Strong. Everyone always said I was strong. Strong Isabella, who can handle anything. Who raised her sister, built a career, carried the family. Only now I didn't feel strong at all. I felt hollowed out, deceived, and bone-deep exhausted. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the last few months over and over in my head. Every detail, every conversation, every odd moment that had seemed insignificant then and now took on a sinister meaning. I remembered Valentina's birthday in June. We celebrated at a restaurant, me, Emiliano, Valentina, and a few of her friends. I booked the table, paid for the banquet, brought the cake. Emiliano gave her an expensive smartphone, saying her old one was falling apart. Back then, I was even touched by his thoughtfulness. And Valentina blushed as she accepted the gift, and they exchanged the look I took for ordinary gratitude. Now I understood. By then, they were already sleeping together. Maybe they even had sex that night, after I, tipsy, fell asleep in the taxi on the way home. Emiliano said he'd drive Valentina home since I was in that state. He came back 4 hours later. 4 hours, Carl. I sat up in bed and turned on the bedside lamp. The phone read 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep anyway. My thoughts were spinning like a hamster wheel. I grabbed my laptop and opened the bank statements. An interesting picture emerged. Regular transfers from Emiliano to some unfamiliar card number. $50 to $100 at a time. They started exactly 6 months ago. I opened his social media. Yes, I knew the password. We'd never hidden our phones or accounts from each other. Or so I thought. Nothing suspicious in his DMs. But I noticed he deleted his entire message history with Valentina. Completely. They used to text occasionally. She'd ask for advice. He'd reply. Now a clean slate. Too clean to be an accident. I closed the laptop and went to the kitchen. I brewed strong coffee, knowing full well it would kill whatever sleep might be left. I sat by the window and looked out at the sleeping city. Somewhere out there Emiliano was asleep. Somewhere out there, my sister. What were they thinking? Did they regret being found out? Or did they only regret that I'd come home early? My phone buzzed again. A message from Valentina. Isabella, please answer. I'm so ashamed. I never wanted to hurt you. Forgive me. Let's meet and talk. I stared at the screen as a wave of fury rose inside me. Never wanted to hurt me. And what did she think she'd been doing for 6 months? Sitting across from me at the table and lying to my face. While I bought her gifts with the stipend I myself transferred to her. While I shared my worries about how cold Emiliano had become. God, I actually complained to her about my own husband while she was sleeping with him. My fingers typed the reply on their own. You're dead to me. Don't write, don't call. You no longer have a sister. I sent the message and blocked her number. Then I blocked Emiliano. Then I deleted all our photos together from my phone, methodically, one by one. The wedding, the honeymoon, birthdays, trips, simple selfies at home. With every photo erased, it became a little easier to breathe. Dawn found me still sitting by the window with an empty mug in my hands. The city was waking up, windows lighting up in the buildings across the street, the first cars appearing on the roads. An ordinary morning of an ordinary day for millions of people. Only for me, everything had changed forever. At 8 in the morning, I called the lawyer whose number Jimena had given me. Good morning, my name is Isabella. I need a consultation regarding a divorce. How soon could you see me? Would 2 p.m. today work for you? A brisk female voice replied. Perfect. I'll be there. I hung up and looked around. The apartment felt foreign, as if I'd never been there before. For 8 years we'd been building this little nest, choosing wallpaper, furniture, curtains, arguing about the color of the couch, making up by having sex on the new living room carpet. Now it was all just a collection of things. Dead, meaningless objects that meant nothing to me anymore. At 9, I called work and took a personal day. My voice sounded calm, ordinary. No one would have guessed that yesterday my life had shattered into pieces. My boss didn't ask questions, just asked me to send the project files to a colleague. I agreed and hung up. I took a shower, washing away yesterday's nightmare. The water was almost scalding hot, but that was what I wanted, physical pain to drown out the emotional one. I stood under the stream until my skin turned red, until the bathroom filled with steam. I dressed in a strict outfit, black trousers, white blouse, a fitted jacket, styled my hair, put on makeup. I looked at my reflection and saw a stranger, composed, cold, and control. Good. That's the version of me the world would see from now on. At 11, the doorbell rang, sharp, insistent. I looked through the peephole. Valentina. She stood there pale, with swollen, tear-streaked eyes, wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Apparently she hadn't gone home. Isabella, open the door. Please. I need to talk to you. Her voice broke into a plea. I silently stepped away from the door, sat on the couch, and picked up a book, pretending to read. Isabella, I know you're home. Open the door. Valentina was pounding with her fists. Let her knock. The neighbors would hear, get annoyed, she'd leave on her own. I wasn't going to talk to her. Not today. Not tomorrow. Never. After 10 minutes, the noise stopped. I looked through the peephole again. The hallway was empty. I sat back down and exhaled. My hands were trembling, my heart pounding. Keeping a straight face was harder than I thought. My phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. I opened it. Valentina, of course. She'd found a way around the block. Isabella, I understand you'll never forgive me. But please, at least listen. It's all my fault. I fell in love with Emiliano. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. He tried to end it, but I wouldn't let him. Forgive me. I won't appear in your life again, I promise. I read the message 3 times. So now she was taking all the blame, playing the tragic seductress while making Emiliano the victim. How convenient. How damn convenient for them both. I blocked that number too, then went into my phone settings and activated the filter for unknown callers. No more messages from them. No more contact at all. There were still 2 hours left before my meeting with the lawyer. I decided to go to the cemetery to visit my parents. I hadn't been there since August. Work, deadlines, constant busyness. Now I desperately needed to be near them, even if only by their graves. I took the bus, watching the gray autumn city roll by outside the window. People hurried about their lives, some to work, some to shops, some walking children. Ordinary life went on, no matter what. The world hadn't stopped for my personal tragedy. The cemetery was almost empty. I bought chrysanthemums at the gate. Mom had loved yellow flowers. I walked along the familiar paths to their plot. The black granite headstone, the oval portraits. Mom smiling, Dad serious as always. "Hi," I said, sitting down on the bench beside them. "Sorry it's been so long since I came." I placed the flowers in the vase and brushed dry leaves off the stone. "Valentina's sleeping with my husband. It's been 6 months. I caught them yesterday." My voice broke. "God, it hurts so much, Mom. It hurts so damn much." I sat there crying, my face buried in my hands. Here, in this place, I didn't have to pretend to be strong. Didn't have to keep up appearances. I could just be myself, miserable, betrayed, broken. What should I do? I did so much for her. Raised her like my own daughter. And she. The wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere far away, a crow cawed. My parents, as always, were silent. But I felt a bit lighter, as if they'd heard me. The lawyer's office was downtown, in an old building with high ceilings and creaky parquet floors. The secretary led me into an office at exactly 2 o'clock. Behind a massive wooden desk sat a woman of about 45, with short hair and sharp gray eyes. "Isabella, please, sit down. Jimena told me about your call," she said, extending her hand. "My name is Paloma. Tell me what happened." I laid out the facts plainly, without emotion. 8 years of marriage. The apartment in my name, I paid the down payment and the mortgage. The car registered to my husband, but also bought with my money. No children. An affair with my younger sister lasting 6 months. I want a divorce as quickly as possible and for him to get nothing of what we built together. Paloma took notes in her notebook, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Do you have proof of the affair? Photos? Messages? Witnesses?" I caught them together. In our apartment. Both admitted the relationship had been going on for 6 months. Verbal confessions, unfortunately, aren't considered evidence. "Do you have a recording of that conversation, or any written admission?" I took out my phone and showed her Valentina's message admitting to the affair with Emiliano. Paloma nodded approvingly. "Good. We can use that. Now, about the property. Was the apartment purchased before or during the marriage?" "During. But the down payment came from my inheritance after my parents died. I still have all the documents to prove it." "Excellent. That significantly strengthens your case. And who's been paying the mortgage?" "Mostly me. My salary is higher, and I insisted on the payments coming from my account. His income went to daily expenses, groceries, utilities, entertainment." Paloma paused for a moment, tapping her pen against the desk. "You see, Isabella, by law all property acquired during marriage is considered jointly owned. But there are nuances. If we prove the apartment was purchased primarily with your personal funds, inheritance plus your mortgage payments, we can claim the majority, maybe even all of it. The car is trickier since it's in his name." "I don't care about the car," I said sharply. "He can have it. I only care about the apartment. I don't want him to get a single square meter." "I understand completely. We'll fight for it. Gather all the documents, purchase contract, mortgage statements, inheritance papers, any receipts or bank transfers proving that you were the one investing in this property. The more paperwork, the better." I nodded, jotting everything down in my notebook. "One more thing," Paloma said, studying me closely. "Are you sure you want a divorce? I ask all my clients this. Divorce is a serious step. Sometimes people decide in the heat of the moment and later regret it." "I'm absolutely sure," I said, my voice steady. "Even if he got down on his knees and begged for forgiveness, I wouldn't forgive him. Not after what he did. And especially not because it was my sister." The lawyer nodded in understanding. "All right, then let's proceed. I'll prepare the petition, you'll sign it, and we'll file it with the court. Given the circumstances and the fact that there are no children, the process shouldn't drag on. 2 to 3 months at most. 2 to 3 months. I'd still be Emiliano's wife on paper for another 2 or 3 months. The thought made me nauseous. Can it be any faster? Unfortunately, the law is the law. but I'll do everything I can to move it along. We discussed a few more details. I signed the engagement agreement and left the office feeling that at least something had started moving in the right direction. Now there was nothing to do but wait. Outside, I turned on my phone, 5 more missed calls from unknown numbers during the meeting. Valentina clearly wasn't giving up. I cleared the notifications without listening to the voicemails and headed for the bus stop. On the way home, I stopped at the supermarket. I needed to buy something for dinner, though I had no appetite at all. I wandered the aisles, tossing items into the basket on autopilot. Yogurt, bread, cheese, eggs. The basic kit of a single woman. At the checkout stood a young couple. He had his arm around her waist. She whispered something in his ear, both of them laughing. It physically hurt to look at them. A week ago I thought everything was fine with Emiliano and me, that we were just going through a rough patch, but the love was still there. What a naive fool I'd been. I paid and walked outside. Dusk had fallen, the streetlights were on. It was cold, the wind cut right through me. I hunched my shoulders, pulling up my collar, and suddenly noticed a familiar figure by my building's entrance. Emiliano. He stood by the door, shifting from foot to foot, smoking. When he saw me, he flicked the cigarette away and stepped toward me. Isabella, wait. I need to talk to you. I stopped a few meters from him. My first instinct was to turn and leave, but my feet felt glued to the pavement. We have nothing to talk about. I moved past him toward the entrance. He grabbed my arm. I jerked away. Don't you dare touch me. I'm sorry, he said, letting go and raising his hands in a placating gesture. Just hear me out. 5 minutes. Then I'll go and I won't bother you again, I promise. I looked at him. He looked awful, unshaven, red-eyed, clothes wrinkled. It seemed like he'd slept in his car or at a friend's place. 3 minutes, I ground out, and only because I have something to say to you myself. We moved away from the door toward the playground. The swings creaked softly in the wind. The sandbox was empty. I sat on a bench, holding the grocery bag on my knees like a shield. Emiliano stayed standing, hands shoved in his pockets. Talk, I said coldly. He hesitated, searching for words, then exhaled and began. I know you don't believe me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But it really was a mistake, Isabella. A huge, monstrous mistake. A 6-month-long mistake? I gave a mirthless smile. Very convincing. I'm not making excuses. I just want to explain how it happened, he said, rubbing his face. We grew distant. You were always at work, so was I. We stopped talking, stopped spending time together. I felt lonely in my own marriage. So you decided to fuck my sister. Great solution. He flinched at my tone. It started by accident. She came by one evening when you weren't home. She was crying over some guy who dumped her. I comforted her. We had some wine. We talked. And then it just happened. It just happened that you ended up in bed. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. Emiliano, I'm not an idiot. Nothing just happens. You both made a choice. And you kept making that choice every day for 6 months. You're right, he said, lowering his head. We're both to blame. But Isabella, I love you. I've always loved you. With Valentina it was I don't even know how to explain it. An infatuation, madness. She's young, impressionable. She looked at me like I was a hero. With her I felt young again, wanted. And with me, how did you feel? I stepped closer and he instinctively backed away. Old? Unwanted? Maybe you should have talked to me about that instead of climbing into bed with my 24-year-old sister. I tried. He raised his voice. How many times did I suggest we go somewhere, spend a weekend together? You were always busy with work, projects, deadlines. Don't you dare. I jabbed a finger into his chest. Don't you dare shift the blame onto me. I worked so we could live normally, so we could pay the mortgage, which, by the way, you barely contributed to. While you played your computer games and de-stressed, I was working myself into the ground. I know, and I'm grateful. Shut up. I don't care about your gratitude. My voice broke into a shout. A few passers-by turned to look, but I didn't care. You betrayed me. With my sister. In my home. On my sheets. And now you're trying to justify it by saying I didn't give you enough attention. He said nothing, staring at the ground. A tear rolled down his cheek. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Please forgive me. I'm done with Valentina. For good. I want our family back. I want to fix this." "Done?" I laughed, hysterical. "When exactly? Yesterday, when I caught you? Or this morning, when you realized you'd lost the apartment? That's unfair." "Unfair?" I grabbed him by the jacket. "You want to talk about fairness? Fine. Tomorrow my lawyer is filing for divorce. You won't get a cent from the apartment. Go wherever you want, your parents, your buddies, Valentina. I don't care. But you are not setting foot in my home again. Ever." I shoved him away and headed for the entrance. "Isabella," he called after me, "please don't do this. Let's try again. We'll see a therapist, work on our relationship." I turned back at the doorway. "You know what hurts the most? I could have forgiven an affair. If it were some stranger, a one-night stand. But you chose Valentina, my sister, the person I loved more than anyone in the world, and that I will never forgive." Upstairs, I locked all the locks and leaned against the door, breathing hard. My hands were shaking so much the grocery bag slipped to the floor. A yogurt rolled out and went skittering down the hallway. I stared at it blankly, unable to make myself pick it up. The conversation with Emiliano wrung me dry. His tears, his excuses, his pathetic attempts to pin the blame on our busy schedules, all of it filled me with disgust. Had I really spent 8 years with this man? Had I really loved him? My phone rang. "Jimena. So, are you officially a free woman now?" "Not yet, but soon," I smiled. "How was the meeting with the lawyer?" "Fine. We're filing for divorce tomorrow." Emiliano was waiting outside my building, trying to justify himself. The nerve of him. "Want me to come over?" Wine, ice cream, and TV shows about how men are trash. For the first time in 2 days, I smiled. "Thanks, but not today. I need to be alone, to process all of this." "I get it, but call me anytime, okay? Even in the middle of the night." I thanked her and put the phone down, picked up the grocery bag, put the food away in the fridge, turned on the kettle, took out a mug. Everything mechanical, on autopilot. My brain refused to think, to feel, to analyze. It just kept my body running, breathe, walk, drink tea. I sat by the window with the hot mug in my hands. Dusk thickened outside. Somewhere down below, Emiliano was probably still there, smoking, hoping I'd change my mind and let him back in. He'd be waiting forever. I remembered our wedding. The white dress that Mom and I had picked out 6 months before she died. She never got to see me in it. She passed away 3 months before the ceremony. I put it on alone, standing in front of the mirror, and cried. Valentina hugged me, told me Mom was watching from heaven and was proud of me. And 7 years later, that same Valentina was sleeping with my husband. How blind I'd been. How naive and stupid. The phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I was about to decline, but something made me answer. "Hello? Isabella, it's me," Valentina's voice, hoarse, tearful. "Please don't hang up. You have 30 seconds. I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I have to tell you something. I'm pregnant." The world flipped upside down. The mug slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. Hot tea spread across the laminate, but I didn't move. "What?" "I'm 8 weeks along. I took a test this morning. Isabella, I don't know what to do." "By whom?" My voice sounded muffled, distant, like underwater. A long pause. "By Emiliano." "Of course by Emiliano. I haven't been with anyone else." "Pregnant. My sister is pregnant with my husband's child." I closed my eyes, fighting the wave of nausea rising in my throat. "And what do you want me to say? Congratulations?" I don't know," she sobbed. "I'm scared, Isabella. I'm only 24, I'm still in school, I have no money, no job. Emiliano says he'll marry me, but I'm not sure." "Stop," I cut her off. "He already knows?" "Yes. I told him an hour ago. He was shocked at first, but then he said he'd take responsibility, that we'd raise the baby together." So when Emiliano was standing in front of me half an hour ago, swearing he loved me, begging for another chance, he already knew. He knew Valentina was pregnant. And still, he lied to my face. "Wonderful," I laughed bitterly. Just perfect. Go live together, have your baby, be happy. Just leave me out of it. Isabella. I said, leave me out of it. You're both dead to me. Do you understand? I don't want to hear about your pregnancy, your child, or your life with Emiliano. You no longer exist for me. I hung up and hurled the phone at the wall. It hit, the screen cracked, and it fell to the floor. I didn't care. Pregnant. A child. They were going to have a child. And I postponed pregnancy for 8 years, for work, for my career, for the money to pay for that damn apartment. I don't remember how I got through that night. I only remember sitting on the floor in a puddle of cold tea among the shards of the broken mug, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. I just sat there, arms around my knees, trying to grasp this new reality. Valentina is pregnant by Emiliano. They're going to be parents. My sister is having a child with my husband. The thought spun in my mind like a broken record, each repetition more absurd, more painful than the last. I remembered 3 years ago, when I took a pregnancy test myself. 2 lines. I remember that mix of joy and fear. I ran to Emiliano's office without waiting for the evening, burst in, and showed him the test right there in front of his coworkers. He hugged me, lifted me up, spun me around. Everyone clapped and congratulated us. A week later, I miscarried. Early term, the doctors said. It happens. Try again. I lay in the hospital crying, and Emiliano held my hand, promising everything would be all right, that we'd have our baby someday. After that, I was afraid to try again. I kept postponing, making excuses. First, we needed financial stability. Then I wanted that promotion. Then there was another big project. And then I just stopped thinking about it altogether. And now Valentina, my immature, careless little sister, who can't keep a boyfriend for more than 3 months, who still lives off my money, is pregnant. By my husband. By the man I was supposed to have children with. Life's a bitch. When dawn finally came, I got up off the floor, cleaned up the shards, wiped up the tea, picked up my phone. The screen was spiderwebbed with cracks but still worked. 12 missed calls from Valentina. 5 from Emiliano. I deleted them all without reading. I showered, got dressed, looked at myself in the mirror, puffy face, red eyes, dark circles. I covered them with concealer as best I could, but I still looked awful. Whatever. It didn't matter. At 8 in the morning, Paloma called. Good morning. There's been a new development, I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. My sister is pregnant by my husband. Does that change anything legally? The lawyer was silent for a moment, clearly processing that. Formally, no. The baby will be born after the divorce, so it won't be considered shared. But it does complicate things emotionally. How are you feeling? Fine, I lied. I just want this over with as soon as possible. I understand. I'll speed up the paperwork. The filing will be ready by this evening. You can sign it, and we'll submit it to the court tomorrow. After hanging up, I called work. Asked for 2 more days off. My boss sounded worried. I'd never taken sick leave, was always at my desk. I had to lie about coming down with a sudden cold. He agreed, told me to rest and get well. The day dragged endlessly. I wandered around the apartment aimlessly, sorting through things. Kept stumbling upon reminders of my life with Emiliano, a photo from the seaside, a magnet from our mountain trip, a book he'd forgotten. Everything went straight into a garbage bag. I was methodically purging the space of his presence, erasing the traces of 8 years of marriage. In the closet, I found a box full of photos. Our wedding, our honeymoon by the sea, birthdays, New Year's celebrations. I went through them one by one, staring at the happy faces of people I no longer recognized. That Isabella and that Emiliano no longer existed. All that remained were me, the betrayed wife, and him, the liar and the cheater. In one photo, there were 3 of us, me, Emiliano, and Valentina. Last New Year's. Valentina sat between us, arms around our shoulders, laughing into the camera. I'd been so happy then, thinking how wonderful it was that the 2 people closest to me got along so well. I tore the photo in half, then into quarters, then into eighths, until all that was left were tiny scraps of paper. By evening, I'd filled 3 large garbage bags. Everything that reminded me of Emiliano, of our life together, of the time when I'd been happy and blissfully unaware. I carried it all out to the dumpster without looking back. When I came back inside, I felt a strange sense of relief. The apartment felt empty, but it was an honest emptiness. There were no more lies here. Paloma called. "The documents are ready. You can come by to sign." I grabbed my jacket and left the house. On the way to the lawyer's office, Jimena called. "Isabella, I heard everything. A mutual friend told me about Valentina. Is it true? She's pregnant?" "It's true." "God. Isabella, how are you even holding up? Should I come over? Or you can come here. You shouldn't be alone right now." "Jimena, thank you. But I really need time. I have to get through this on my own, you know?" "I understand. But promise me you'll call if it gets too hard." "I promise." I hung up and stopped in the middle of the street. People streamed around me in both directions, hurrying somewhere. No one noticed the woman standing still, staring into nothing, trying to find the strength to take the next step. But I found that strength. I exhaled, straightened my shoulders, and kept walking. Toward the lawyer, toward the divorce, toward a new life without Emiliano and Valentina. A life I'd have to rebuild from scratch. At Paloma's office, I signed all the papers with a steady hand. The petition for divorce, the property division documents, additional statements proving my rights to the apartment. "I'll file it in court tomorrow," the lawyer said, slipping the documents into a folder. "Given the circumstances and the evidence of infidelity, it should go through quickly. Stay strong, Isabella. The worst is behind you." I nodded, though I knew she was wrong. The worst was only beginning. Because ending a marriage legally is just paperwork. Ending it emotionally, ripping 8 years of love, trust, and shared dreams out of your heart, that's something else entirely. Leaving the office, I wandered aimlessly through the evening city. I stopped by a cafe, ordered a coffee, sat by the window. I watched people passing by and wondered how many of them were happy in their marriages. How many were cheating? How many were living a lie, the way I had for the past 6 months without knowing it? My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I was about to delete it, but opened it anyway. "Isabella, this is Emiliano's mother. Please don't destroy your family over a moment of weakness. Emiliano regrets everything. He loves you. All men make mistakes, but that's no reason to get divorced. Think about the years you've spent together." I read the message twice. So Emiliano had run crying to his mommy, and now she was trying to convince me to forgive the cheater, because all men make mistakes. I typed back. "He cheated on me for 6 months with my sister. That's not a moment of weakness. That's betrayal. And yes, he loves me so much that he's already about to become the father of Valentina's child. Don't contact me again." I sent it and blocked the number. When I got home, I found a huge bouquet of roses by the door. Red, my favorite, or used to be. Now I wasn't sure I loved anything at all. Attached was a card in Emiliano's handwriting. "Forgive me, please. I can't live without you. I made a terrible mistake, but I still love you. Only you." I threw the bouquet straight down the trash chute without even going inside. I tore the card to pieces and tossed it after it. "Only you." What a touching lie. I wondered if Valentina already knew about his declarations of love to me, or if he was sending her the same kind of letters. The next few days blurred together into one gray smear. I went back to work, burying myself in drawings and calculations. Worked 12-hour days, came home exhausted, fell into bed. It helped, not to think, not to feel, just to exist. My colleagues noticed something was wrong, but they didn't ask questions. I was grateful for that silence. I didn't want to explain that my life had fallen apart while they were chatting about football and the new TV show. A week later, Paloma called. "The case has been accepted by the court. The first hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Emiliano has received the summons. He tried contacting my office, suggested a settlement, asked for a meeting with you. How should I respond? No meetings. No settlements. Let his lawyer talk to you. I don't want to see him. I understand. He's also claiming the right to half the apartment as marital property. We have documents proving it was bought with my inheritance and my money." "Yes, but he's insisting on his share." Be prepared that you might have to either compensate him financially or sell the apartment and split the proceeds. How much would the compensation be? She named the figure. I whistled softly. It was everything I had in savings, plus a loan. But I was ready. Anything to avoid dividing that apartment. Anything not to see him ever again. All right, I agreed to the compensation. Please prepare the documents. That evening, I met with Jimena for the first time in 2 weeks. We sat in our favorite bar, the one we used to go to as students. Jimena ordered wine, I ordered whiskey. Strong, burning. You've lost weight, Jimena said, looking me over. And you look tired. I'm not sleeping well. Working a lot. Isabella, you can't keep going like this. You'll destroy yourself. And what else should I do? I downed the whiskey in one gulp, wincing. Sit at home crying? Complain to my friends? Throw tantrums? You need to feel it. You're bottling everything up inside. That's not healthy. I poured myself another. The alcohol burned my throat but dulled the pain inside. You know what hurts the most? I looked at Jimena through the blur of tears and whiskey. Not that he cheated. Not even that it was with my sister. But that they're having a baby. The family I dreamed about, just without me. Isabella. I spent 8 years building a future with him. I postponed pregnancy for the sake of my career, for money, for stability. I thought there was still time. And he went and got a 24-year-old student pregnant, a girl who doesn't even have a real job. My voice broke. Jimena reached across the table and took my hand. That's so unfair. Cruel. But you'll get through this. You're strong. I'm tired of being strong, I said, taking another sip. I've been strong my whole life. After our parents died, I was strong, raising Valentina. At university, I was strong, studying hard and working part-time. In marriage, I was strong, carrying the family financially. And for what? I ended up alone. Completely alone. You're not alone. I'm here. Other friends are, too. We're not going to leave you. I gave a bitter smile. Thanks. But at night, when I wake up from nightmares, no one's there. When the panic hits and I realize I wasted the best years of my life on a man who betrayed me, I'm alone. And that won't change. We stayed in the bar until closing. I got drunk for the first time in years. Jimena called a taxi, brought me home, and helped me up the stairs. Call me tomorrow, okay? She said at the door. Just so I know you're all right. I nodded and shut the door. Stumbled to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed without even undressing. The alcohol dulled the pain, but it didn't erase it. It was still there, coiled tightly inside me. Morning greeted me with a splitting headache and nausea. I barely made it to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked in the mirror. Swollen face, red eyes, gray skin. A wreck of a woman. I took some painkillers, made a strong coffee, and forced myself to eat a piece of toast. My stomach protested, but I needed to get something down. I was half an hour late to work. My boss gave me a sharp, assessing look but said nothing. My coworker, Sebastian, silently placed a glass of water and a packet of aspirin on my desk. Apparently, my condition was obvious. The day dragged painfully. I tried to focus on the blueprints, but the numbers blurred before my eyes, and the pounding in my head made me want to scream. At lunch, I hid in the far corner of the cafeteria, hoping no one would sit with me. No luck. Hey, Isabella, mind if I join you? Sebastian was already setting down his tray across from me. I nodded without looking up from the bowl of soup I had no intention of eating. Look, it's none of my business, he hesitated, but you haven't been yourself lately. If you need help or just want to talk, I'm here. Thanks. I'm fine. Isabella, we've worked together for 5 years. I can tell you're not fine. I looked up at him. Sebastian was a good guy, steady, reliable, always ready to lend a hand. We were work friends, sometimes grabbed a drink after projects, talked shop. But I'd never let him into my personal life. I'm getting a divorce, I said flatly. My husband cheated on me with my younger sister. She's pregnant. So yeah, that's that. Sebastian froze with his spoon halfway to his mouth. Jesus. Isabella, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Me too. We sat in silence for a while. He finished his soup. I kept stirring mine. If you ever want to talk, my offer stands, he said quietly. Or just sit in silence. Sometimes that helps too. I almost smiled. Thanks, Sebastian. Really? That evening, as I was getting ready to leave, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I was about to delete it without reading, but the text caught my eye. Isabella, this is Soledad, Emiliano's mother. I beg you, please meet with me. I need to speak with you privately. It's important. It's not only about Emiliano. I reread the message twice. What now? Was she going to beg me to forgive her precious son again? I was about to type a refusal, but my hand froze over the keyboard. It's not only about Emiliano. What did that mean? Curiosity overpowered reason. All right, tomorrow at 6 p.m., cafe on the main square. A reply came within a minute. Thank you. I'll be there. I regretted agreeing the moment I hit send. Why did I do that? What was the point of meeting my ex-mother-in-law when everything was already settled? But I'd made the arrangement, so I'd have to go. The next day, I arrived at the cafe right at 6. Soledad was already there, sitting by the window. I hadn't seen her in about a year. Last Emiliano's birthday, she and her husband had been on vacation. She looked older now, deeper lines around her mouth, more gray in her hair. Isabella, thank you for coming, she said, standing and offering her hand. I shook it formally and sat down across from her. What did you want to tell me? She ordered tea for both of us, though I declined. Then she sat in silence for a long while, turning the cup in her hands. I know you hate me after that message. I don't hate you. I just don't understand why you wanted to meet. I need to tell you the truth. About Valentina. Soledad lifted her eyes to mine, and I saw something like fear in them. Something even Emiliano doesn't know. I straightened, alert. What truth? Valentina, this isn't the first time she's done something like this, Soledad said, biting her lip. 3 years ago, when she was dating that boy, Rodrigo, I think, she tried to seduce my husband, Emiliano's father. The world tilted. What? We invited her to our country house that summer, remember? You and Emiliano couldn't come, you were busy. Valentina asked if she could go, said she wanted a break from city life. And while she was there she walked in on Fernando in the shower, naked, told him she wanted him. I sat frozen, trying to process what I'd just heard. Valentina had tried to seduce Emiliano's father 3 years ago, when she was only 21, when I was supporting her financially, paying for her university, believing she was an innocent, heartbroken girl. Fernando threw her out immediately, Soledad went on, avoiding my gaze. He yelled at her, told her she was sick, that she needed professional help. Valentina started crying, fell to her knees, begged him not to tell anyone. She said it was a moment of madness, that she was drunk, even though none of us had been drinking that day. Fernando promised to stay silent, for your sake. He didn't want to destroy your marriage or your relationship with your sister. Why didn't you tell me? My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. Why didn't you say anything back then? Soledad looked up at me, eyes full of tears. Fernando forbade me. He said it would only cause pain. That Valentina was young, foolish, that everyone makes mistakes, that we should give her a chance to change. And I believed him. I thought it was truly a one-time lapse in judgment. But when I found out what happened between you and Emiliano, I realized it wasn't an accident. I don't even know what to call it. A sickness? A pathology? I leaned back in my chair, trying to absorb this new information. So Valentina had already been like this back then, preying on men in my family. First my father-in-law, then my husband. What next? Who else would she have tried to seduce if I hadn't cut her out of my life? But that's not all, Soledad said, taking a smartphone from her bag, scrolling, and handing it to me. Fernando hired a private investigator after he found out about Emiliano. He wanted to understand what was going on with the girl, and the investigator discovered see for yourself. I took the phone. On the screen was a document, a detective's report. I skimmed the lines, and with every word I felt colder. Valentina had been seeing a married professor at the university. The affair lasted 6 months and ended in scandal when the professor's wife found out. Before that, there was a married colleague of her ex-boyfriend. Earlier still, her classmate's father. All of them married. All at least 10 years older than her. All had something she could use: money, connections, opportunities. She targets married men on purpose, I whispered, handing the phone back. It's a pattern. The psychologist we consulted called it an attachment disorder, Soledad said, wiping away tears. After your parents died, she never worked through her grief properly. You took on the role of her mother, but you were too young, too strict. Valentina sought attention, love, care wherever they were given without demands. And married men? They give that without expecting commitment. They're already tied down, they have wives, children. It feels safe to play at love with them without facing a real relationship. I listened and realized it all fit. Valentina had always been odd with guys her age. She dated them, then dumped them in a month or two, complaining they were immature, unserious. Meanwhile, she was sleeping with her friends' fathers and her professors. But why Emiliano? I looked at Soledad. Why him? Because you were happy, she answered quietly. Emiliano talked about you a lot, how successful you were at work, how you were building a career, buying an apartment. For Valentina, that was a challenge. She's always lived in your shadow, always Isabella's little sister. And here was her chance to take something that was yours. To prove to herself she was worth something too. To prove it by taking my husband? I gave a bitter laugh. Excellent logic. Isabella, I'm not excusing her. God, no. What she did is monstrous. But I want you to understand, this is not your fault. Nothing you did or didn't do led to this. Valentina is ill. She needs help. I don't care, I said, standing and picking up my bag. Ill or healthy, it's no longer my problem. She's having a baby with your son. Let him take care of her now. Isabella, wait. Soledad grabbed my hand. I'm not finished. It's about the baby. I stopped, looking down at her. What about the baby? Soledad hesitated, then exhaled. The investigator checked. Valentina is pregnant, yes. But the timing, Isabella, she's not 8 weeks, like she told Emiliano. She's 14 weeks. And 14 weeks ago Emiliano was on a business trip, 2 weeks in another city. I personally saw him off. The world tilted again. I slowly sank back into my chair. So the baby isn't Emiliano's? Or at least there's a strong chance it isn't. She lied about the date so he'd believe it was his. I stared at Soledad, trying to process it. Valentina is pregnant not by Emiliano, or maybe not. She's lying about how far along she is, manipulating him, making him feel responsible for a child that might not even be his. Does Emiliano know? No. Fernando wanted to tell you first. He thought you had the right to know. Why? What difference does it make to me? I'm divorcing him anyway. Because Emiliano is a fool, but he isn't a bad person, Soledad said, taking my hands. He's been deceived. Valentina used him the way she's used other men. And now she's using the pregnancy to bind him to her. If he learns the truth, maybe he'll wake up. Realize what he's done. Stop trying to win you back and leave you in peace. I nodded slowly. The logic made sense. But a part of me, angry, vengeful, thought something else. If Emiliano finds out Valentina lied, that the baby isn't his, it will destroy him. He's already lost me, lost his home. Now he'd lose the illusion of a family with Valentina. He'd be completely alone. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the pain he caused me. What do you want me to do? I asked. Nothing. Just know the truth. Fernando and I will talk to Emiliano ourselves. We'll show him the evidence. We'll demand that Valentina take a paternity test after the baby is born. If it's his, well, then Emiliano will pay child support. But we won't allow him to marry her. I stood again, decisively this time. Do whatever you want. They're not my family anymore. Not my problems. Thank you for telling me. At least now I know it wasn't just my cheating husband, it was also my psychopath sister. Isabella. Goodbye, Soledad. Tell Fernando I appreciate his decency 3 years ago. I only wish that decency hadn't cost me my marriage. I left the cafe without looking back. Outside, the October evening was cold, a fine rain was falling. I stood under the awning, watching the cars go by, trying to sort out what I felt. Anger? Yes. Pain? That too. But also, a strange relief. This wasn't my fault. Nothing I did pushed Valentina into Emiliano's bed. She was ill, has been for a long time, and she may continue to be, but that's no longer my concern. I pulled out my phone and texted Jimena, "We need to meet, urgently. You won't believe what I just found out." Jimena arrived 20 minutes later. We sat in her car in the cafe's parking lot while I told her everything Soledad had said. With each sentence, Jimena's eyes grew wider. "Holy hell," she breathed when I finished. "So Valentina's a serial homewrecker? And the baby might not even be Emiliano's?" "Exactly. And what are you going to do now?" I shrugged, watching the raindrops slide down the windshield. "Nothing. Keep living. Finalize the divorce. Start fresh. But you could tell Emiliano. Show him who Valentina really is. Let him know she's lying to him." "Why?" I turned to my friend. "Jimena, I don't care. Honestly, let his parents handle it. I don't want anything more to do with them. Not with Emiliano, not with Valentina. I want to close this chapter and move on." Jimena studied me closely. "Are you really that calm? Or are you just keeping a straight face?" I thought about it. Was I truly calm? A week ago, I'd been crying on the floor, hurling my phone at the wall, drinking whiskey to oblivion. And now? Now I felt a strange emptiness, as if every emotion had burned itself out, leaving only ash behind. "I'm tired of feeling," I admitted honestly. "Tired of being angry, of crying, of analyzing everything. I just want to live, work, see my friends, maybe get a cat. Boring, I know, but honest." Jimena hugged me. "You know what? You're amazing. Most people would be raising hell right now, revenge, drama, chaos. But you're just moving on. That's strength. Or weakness," I smirked. "Maybe I'm just a coward who's afraid of confrontation." "No," she shook her head. "You're someone who chose peace of mind over drama. That's wisdom." We sat in the car for another half hour, talking about nonsense, some new show Jimena was watching, a ridiculous client at her firm, weekend plans. It felt strangely good to talk about things that had nothing to do with betrayal or divorce. "Hey, why don't we go somewhere Saturday?" Jimena suggested. "A spa day? A hike? Or that new restaurant downtown?" "Let's do the restaurant," I smiled. "I want a proper meal. I've been living on coffee and sandwiches for 2 weeks." "Deal. Saturday, 7 p.m. See you there." I got home around 10 that night. The apartment greeted me with silence and cleanliness. After throwing out all of Emiliano's things, it somehow felt bigger. I changed into pajamas, made herbal tea, and sat on the couch with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. It read easily. For the first time in weeks, my mind wasn't bouncing between memories of the past and worries about the future. I just sat there, sipping tea, reading a detective novel about a woman investigator solving a complicated case. At 11:30, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I was going to ignore it, but opened it anyway. "Isabella, it's Emiliano. Writing from a colleague's phone because you blocked me. My parents told me about Valentina. About everything. I'm in shock. I don't know what to say. You were right about me. I'm a complete idiot. I'm sorry. Not for the cheating, that's unforgivable, but for not seeing who she really was. I won't bother you again. I wish you happiness. You deserve it." I read the message several times. So, Soledad and Fernando had already talked to him. I wondered how he reacted. Anger? Tears? Silent disbelief? Not my concern anymore. I deleted the message and blocked that number too, then went back to my book. The next 3 weeks flew by. I buried myself in work, met up with Jimena and other friends, even signed up for a yoga class. I'd wanted to try it for ages. The final court hearing for the divorce was set for November 1st. On the day, I arrived at the courthouse right at 10 a.m. Emiliano was already sitting in the hallway with his lawyer. He looked terrible, gaunt, pale, dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he jumped up, but I walked past him without even a nod. The hearing lasted 20 minutes. The judge read the verdict. The marriage was dissolved. The apartment remained mine, on the condition that I pay Emiliano compensation. The car went to him. No other shared assets. I signed the papers with a steady hand. So did Emiliano. We left the courtroom through different doors. Outside, it was a bright November day, cold but sunny. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the crisp air, feeling relief. It was over. Legally, I was free again. The phone rang. Jimena. Well, you're officially a free woman now? Officially, I smiled. Then get your butt to the bar. We're celebrating your new life. Jimena, it's 11 in the morning. So what? It's always a good time for champagne. I laughed, for the first time in almost a month, genuinely, from the heart. All right, you win. Meet you at our bar in an hour. When I hung up, I looked around. People were rushing to work, cars humming down the street, life going on. My life was going on. Without Emiliano. Without Valentina. Without a past that no longer held any power over me. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked forward. Toward a new chapter. A new me. A future still unwritten. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of a blank page. On the contrary, I couldn't wait to fill it. 6 months later, I ran into Sebastian from work at a bookstore. We got to talking, grabbed coffee, then went to a movie. A month later, we were dating. He was different, calm, honest, dependable. He didn't make grand promises or drown me in declarations of love. He just was there. And that was enough. I never saw Emiliano again. Heard through mutual friends that he'd moved back in with his parents, that Valentina had given birth to a baby girl, but the paternity test showed the child wasn't his. Valentina left town soon after, leaving the baby in an orphanage. I felt sorry for the child. But Valentina, no. Valentina I didn't pity. Some people come into your life to teach you a lesson. She taught me hers, that blood ties don't guarantee loyalty, that trust must be earned, and that loving yourself is more important than clinging to toxic relationships out of fear of being alone. I learned to live again. And it turned out that life after betrayal can be not just bearable, but truly, beautifully good.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.